As a spiritual practitioner who specifically studies warfare, I want to make a video about what the heck you can do to help yourself, especially for new practitioners. I honestly can't even imagine being a new practitioner with the time that we're living in, but I know that that is a thing, and I know that there are people out there who are in like a beginning phase of their work in the spirit. One thing that you need to know about spiritual warfare is that the entire point is to break your spirit, to get you to give up. You can study within the ancestral lineage, you can study within the God, you can study infrastructure, you can study governments, you can study literally any area that suits you, fits you, is a niche in your world. And there's gonna be spiritual lessons that are applicable that have to do with protection, fortification, resilience, enemies, strategy, victory, and really, what are your morals and your ethics that are related to that? Now, for me, I'm someone who, in the spirit, it's expected of me with the positions and the rights that I have that I sit in honor. The spirits have really high expectations of me because I've been in the work for so long and because I've walked through certain initiation rites. So, with that being said, if you're someone who either has not walked through certain rites of passage within the spirit, or you're just starting with earning that warrior right, because to earn the right of the warrior in the spirit, it is a process. We're seeing it happen right now. Hello, there's a lot of people that are undergoing that process. Basically, every single reading I've been doing recently for people has been about get ready, here's the mountain. Get ready, you're going to the bottom of the ocean. Get ready, we're going to the highs and the lows because we got to get some stuff figured out and processed. Now, again, if you're new, protection has a lot to do with direction. That is a main focal point of the way that I practice. Again, I always say discern because listen, it's your practice and it's your turn, it's your space. So, I might have rights in the spirit, but I'm not an overlord, you know what I mean? So discern with you and see what works. But for me, if I'm sitting in direction and navigation, I will never be lost. And if you are lost in the spirit, doesn't mean you can't figure out where you are, understand that your surroundings, understand the lesson, and figure out where to go. However, if you choose to be lost and you don't discover the direction and the environment, then it's a lot easier to lose. It's a lot easier to have defeat, as in losing. It's a lot easier to go through loss, as in losing. So if you're someone who's new to a practice, or you're looking at things that are happening right now and you feel like maybe you're not as equipped as maybe you could be, work with navigation, work with your navigation skills. A lot of the time when we talk about navigation skills, we're talking about discernment also. Which way do I go? If I know where I am, I've discerned where I am, I've looked around and I've learned this is where I am, these are the people that I'm around, this is the city I live in, this is the environment, this is the temperament of what's going on. And I can see, because I've looked at those things in the physical, I can see within the spirit why I am where I am. Sometimes we don't see the why, but I can see where I am, even if I can't see why I am where I am. Sometimes that spiritual lesson takes a long time, and sometimes we don't see why we're in a lesson until we're at the end of it and it's done. So again, discern. But you can see where you are. Okay, now that you know where you are, where are you trying to go? And how are you going to get there? Because if you look up and you're starting out as a practitioner and you look up and you realize, holy cow, there's a bunch of enemies around. What kind? What are their tools? What are they looking at? Are they looking at you? Because they might not be. But if they are, that's going to change how you navigate out of that situation. Now, I'm not saying this to fearmonger. There's enough fear in the world. There is enough there, okay? But for people who are looking at it, afraid or not, and you're like, what do we do? First, that choice is always up to you. Secondly, the basics of navigation in the spirit. We can navigate in the physical all we want, but if we haven't looked at the spirit, we're still going to be lost there. So you got to look up. You got to look up. You got to look up. Where am I? Where am I going? What the heck is around me right now? Maybe ask the question, why is it here? Why am I in this environment? What's the point of that? Where am I going? And what's it going to cost me to get there? Where am I going and how am I going to get there? Now, where you're going doesn't necessarily have to be like a physical. We talk about this skill with manifestation a lot of the time. I'm manifesting a new life for myself. I'm manifesting a destination of some kind. Okay, relate that to war now. I got to get out of this. How am I going to get there? Where am I going? Literally, where you're going could be the end of a battle. Okay, what does that look like to you? Does that mean safe housing? Does that mean resources for your family so that you can put food on the table? Does that mean there's a whole bunch of other ways that could be applicable, right? So look at what that means for you. If that is the end of the battle, now what you've done is you've taken that physical need, the physical end of the battle, and you have unioned it with the spirit and said, hey, spirit, in the physical, this is what the end of the battle looks like for me. And simultaneously, now you'll be able to walk through the end of the battle. You'll be able to get there in the spirit. Again, we can navigate in the physical without looking up, and sometimes we miss, so you've got to keep looking up. The other thing I'll say is stay close to your spirits. If you have altar spirits, if you keep your ancestors at your altar, if you pray, if you talk to God, however you would keep that practice, okay? Because there's so many different kinds of practices, and there's so many different kinds of practitioners, and we come from so many different places. It's a lot when you really think about it. Like, there's so much stuff going on in the spiritual spaces. So that's the other part. Stay close to your spirits, because if you're looking at spiritual warfare specifically, part of the way, just generally speaking, that people can be broken down and convinced to give up is that they get taken away from those spirits somehow. So if you can walk knowing that you might not get a response from them, if you can walk knowing that you might not have direct access to them at that time, but they're near you, then that tool is not going to be able to touch you. Another thing to look at also, if you can look at the tools that are around you, we're taking a step away from navigation for a second. We're going to look at tools and weaponry. If you can look at a tool, weapon or not, everything can be turned into something that is harmful and dangerous. So we're looking at a tool in terms of neutrality, looking at how it is negative, bad, shadowed. There's a bunch of nuance to that side of the conversation and the way that was phrased. And also looking at the more one extreme, right? Look at the ways also that it's helpful. What does it do to build or construct, not destruct? But what does it do to help build, construct? What's positive? What's in the light? The opposites, right? If you can look at both sides of them and learn to sit with them in a non-judgmental space, a place of observation. I'm looking at this and it does this thing. I'm looking at this and I've learned about it. I'm looking at this and that's what it is. That doesn't mean you're not going to have to process emotions, because usually that's a part of the process. Just, let yourself feel as necessary, but break down the logic of it. Once you do that, you've looked at both sides of the extremes of the tool, the harm, the good, etc., etc. You've been able to neutralize it. Now I'm looking at myself. Now that I have this tool in my hand, I've broken it down. What the heck am I going to do with it? How am I going to hold it? Do I need to hold it? Do I need to destroy the tool? What's the point of it? Why is spirit having me look at this tool right now? Lots of questions after that. But then you center yourself. I've neutralized the extremes. Now what now? Here. Protection and guard in my world also, it looks like keeping the spirits fed. So if that's a part of your practice, then, staying close to the spirits will be a part of that. Staying close to them regardless of if you can hear them also. Because that offering that you make today is going to have a repercussion a while from now. It's going to have another repercussion after that. And then there's going to be another one after that. Magic reverberates for a long time, a long time. So if you're making offerings on a consistent basis, this is very Pisces energy, sacrifice and continuation, especially Saturn back in Pisces, continuation of that. So keep up, not to get too astrological with it, because this is like a whole other topic. Normally I'm talking about astrology, but it's the eclipse day where it's like almost peak to the eclipse as I'm looking at my clock right now. I'm making a turn. Here we go. Now you know. And be prepared to understand the enemy within yourself. That is probably the hardest part of the work, in my opinion. If you're looking at the spiritual warfare that's going on right now and you find yourself, this is not to say don't pick up those tools and weapons and do what you need to in the spirit. That's not what I'm saying when I say this, okay, to preface. Part of the work, though, is looking at yourself and seeing if someone else is coming at you with a battle, with a tool, with something that is harmful, violent, understanding in yourself, if you are the enemy to that person, why? If you fall for some reason and you aren't able to protect yourself, how is I an enemy to myself in that situation? Because really, the truth of it is you are not ever going to be your own enemy. And if we look at the extremes of tools, contradictions are around a lot if you start that work, so just be prepared. One of the other extremes is then I'm always my worst enemy then. Or at least I have been in some part of my world and in some part of my life. So if you can sit with, I'm the enemy to myself because I blind myself to my trauma because I don't want to look at it. And that's hard. You see what I mean? That's a hard thing to look at. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's work. Maybe you give up a position in a conversation about morals and ethics and you don't speak up and say anything and then you regret it. why did I do that? There's so many examples of this, okay? So I'm not going to go like too deep into it, but recognizing where you are the enemy is going to teach you about other enemies in the world. And if you can look at yourself as the enemy and then remind yourself that you are not in the highest elevation and in the highest authority, you are always going to be the one who is able to offer you unconditional love. The spirits are there to offer you unconditional love. The spirits who really, really love you and ride with you. Oh my God, we're almost out of time. They're going to be there for you too. I gratitude, reverence, and love to you. This video was like super long. Hopefully it helps.